welcome back to this week's episode of Unknown Endeavors. We're doing it a little bit differently this time because I didn't feel like setting up the camera and everything else, and it's freezing here. So this week is actually a very special episode because not only are we talking about a repeated legend, but it's almost Christmas! So, Merry Christmas, guys! Excuse the movement, I have a very weird setup right now. The first legend that we're going to discuss is Krampus, which you know in movies. It's funny enough, it's also on postal cards. He is literally the opposite of Saint Nick and Santa Claus. His story started in Germany, Austria, and Italy. He is a horned animatropic figure who during the Advent season scares children. The legend of Krampus has been thought to go back to about the 6th or 7th century. The legend is said to go back to the 6th or 7th century. Though nothing was recorded till about the 16th century, he appears in many different variations, but most of them share common physical characteristics. He's hairy, usually brown or black. He's got cloven hooves, horns of a goat, and has a long pointed tongue. And he also has fangs. He carries chains that are thought to symbolize the binding of the devil. He thrashes said chains for a dramatic effect. The chains are sometimes accompanied with bells of various sizes. He had more pagan origins. He carries something called a root, which is essentially a bundle of birch branches that he carries around and uses them to swat children. The root has many significance to pre-Christian pagan initiation rites. The birch branches are replaced with a whip in some representations. Sometimes Krampus appears with a sack or basket strapped to his back. This is to cart off children for either drowning, eating, or he transports them personally to hell. In some older variations, though, there are mentions of naughty children being put in a bag and then taken away. In Styria, the root is presented by Krampus to families. The twigs are painted gold and displayed year-round in their homes. It's a reminder for kids who have been being good, to keep being good in order for Krampus not to come for them next year. In smaller villages, the figure has other beastly companions, such as the antlered wild man figures, and Saint Nick is nowhere to be seen. Krampus is more funny in North America than feared. There are celebrations for him. We'll go into that in a little bit. In many parts of Croatia, Krampus is described as a devil wearing a cloth sack around his waist and chains around his neck, ankles, and wrists. As a part of the tradition, when a child gets a gift from Saint Nick, he is given a golden branch to represent good deeds. However, if the child is misbehaved, Krampus will take the gifts for himself, and he will leave a silver branch to represent the child's bad acts. In Alpine Austria and some parts of Germany, there is a day called Krampus Night. Essentially, this is when adults dress up as Krampus to scare kids in their homes. Children have also seen Krampus running through the streets during the festival. Basically, that's adults running around trying to scare kids. It's actually still a tradition to this day. There are cards for Krampus, but they aren't very warm and fuzzy. They say, "Greetings from Krampus," and they show him stuffing a distressed child into his satchel, or preparing to hit one with a bundle of birch sticks. There are actually some postcards that are more inappropriate that I'm not going to talk about in this. There's a legend of an ogre named Gryla. She has been around since the 13th century, and she's said to have children. Not like 2 or 3 children, she has 13 of them. And no, she doesn't look like this, or act like this.
What are you doing in my swamp?
Every year, her and her 13 children, who are called Yule Lads, emerge from their cave to help their mom, and her husband stays behind and doesn't help them in any way, shape, or form. The legend originates in Iceland, in the mountains. Her home consists of her husband, the Yule Cat, which we'll discuss later, and her 13 boys, who are again called the Yule Lads. The Yule Lads are mischievous pranksters who steal or harass the population, and they'll have their own ways of harassing. They come into town one by one. They leave small gifts and shoes on windowsills, but if a child has been disobedient, they instead leave a rotten potato in the shoe. Almost a rotten tomato. In modern times, the Yule Lads have more of a benevolent role, comparable to Santa Claus and other related figures. They are generally portrayed wearing late medieval Icelandic clothing, but are shown in the costume traditionally worn by Santa. The Yule Lads start by Sheep Coat Clod. He is said to harass sheep, but is impaired by his stiff peg legs. He arrives December 12th and leaves December 13th. He arrives December 12th and leaves December 25th. Gully Gawk is the second one. He hides in gullies, waiting for the appropriate opportunity to sneak into the cowshed and steal milk. He arrives December 13th and leaves on December 26th. Stubby, who is abnormally short, he steals pans to eat crusts left on them. He arrives December 14th and leaves December 27th. Then there's Spoon Licker, who steals and licks wooden spoons and is extremely thin due to malnutrition. He arrives December 15th and leaves December 28th. Next is Pot Scraper, who steals leftovers from pots. He arrives December 16th and leaves December 29th. Then there is Bowl Licker, who hides under beds waiting for someone to put down their Oscar, which he then steals. He arrives December 17th and leaves December 30th. Next is Door Slammer, which he's pretty self-explanatory too. He likes to slam doors, especially during the night, waking people up. He arrives December 18th and leaves December 31st. Then there's Skyer Gobbler. I apologize if I said that wrong, but he has a great affinity for Skyer, which is like yogurt that he'll take. He arrives December 19th and leaves January 1st. Next is Sausage Swiper. He hides in the rafters and snatches sausages that are being smoked. He arrives December 20th and leaves January 3rd. Next is Doorway Sniffer. He has an abnormally large nose and has an acute sense of smell, which he uses to locate leaf bread. He arrives December 22nd and leaves January 4th. Meat Hook is next. He uses a hook to steal meat. He arrives December 23rd and leaves January 5th. Next is Candle Stealer. He follows children around in order to steal their candles, which were usually made of tallow. He arrives January 24th and leaves January 6th. This legend takes place in France during the 15th century when a man named Hans sells his soul to get rich fast. But once the church got a hold of this news, they took everything from him and he was exiled. He went to the mountains and made a home. Some other legends say that it was in the forest. He dresses as a scarecrow, stuffing straw into his clothes, and at times he wears a black cloak. He spent time trying to lure children into the woods to eat them. One day after roasting a shepherd boy over the fire, something decided enough was enough, and he was struck by lightning, which split his head open. But this actually didn't stop the cannibal. He got a new job helping St. Nick out, by keeping naughty children in line. The boogeyman of Christmas is said to scare or punish children. In some versions, he visits misbehaving children dressed as a scarecrow and tries to persuade them into being more virtuous. The Yule Cat is basically a giant cat who punishes people for not working hard. Legend has it that the cat once roamed the countryside looking for those around the holiday who had not received clothing or done their chores. Kids who worked hard throughout the year were rewarded with fresh garments just before the new year. Families in Iceland work together to ensure nobody will go to the Christmas cat. There is a beloved poem by Johannes Kotlum, apologies if I said that wrong, that goes, "You all know the Yule Cat, and the cat was huge indeed. People didn't know where he came from, or where he went. He opened his glaring eyes wide, the two of them glowing bright. It took a really brave man to look straight into them. His whiskers sharp as bristles, his back arched up high, and the claws of his hairy paws were a terrible sight. He gave a great wave of his strong tail. He jumped and climbed, and he hissed. Sometimes up in the valley, sometimes down by the shore, he roamed at large, very hungry and evil. In the freeing Yule snow, in every home, people shuddered at his name. If one heard a pitiful meow, something evil would happen soon. Everybody knew he hunted men, but didn't care for mice. He picked on the very poor that no new garments got. For Yule, who toiled and lived in dire need, from then he took, in one swoop, their whole Yule dinner, always eating it himself, if he possibly could. Hence it was that the women at their spinning wheels sat, spinning a colorful thread for a frock or a little sock. Because you mustn't let the children. They had to get something new to wear from the grown-ups each year when the lights came on. Unknown endeavors. And I hope you guys have a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year.